1856, Black Hollow, West Virginia, at exactly 2:13 a.m., three identical children stood at the edge of a cornfield, motionless, barefoot, and soaking wet. The farmer who discovered them, Thomas Leary, claimed they had no whites in their eyes. Just darkness. No parents were ever found, no birth records, no explanation. Within 11 days, 5 families in Black Hollow disappeared, their homes abandoned, clocks stopped, food still warm, the Triplets. Never seen again, but this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Across the eastern seaboard between 1850 and 1910, there are over 63 documented cases of unexplained children, triplets, twins, siblings, appearing where they shouldn't, knowing things they couldn't, surviving things they shouldn't. Whispers of the Bayan-born circulated in orphanages, seminaries, and church confessionals, but no priest dared write it down because once you know, they find you. This is not a story of birth. It's a story of return, of children who should not exist, reappearing again and again in different states, with the same names, the same faces, and the same silence. This is the macabre mystery of America's forgotten children, siblings, triplets, and families torn open by something far older than reason, and they were always waiting. In 1871, the St. Louis Orphan Registrar contained the names of 12 children born under unusual conditions. The entries were marked with a small red cross, something the attending nuns were forbidden to write without archdiocesan approval. By the time a visiting bishop arrived in September, the register had been burned, the chapel walls blackened, all 12 children gone. The headmistress, Sister Calpurnia Braddock, was found in the bell tower, eyes gouged out but alive. She spoke a single sentence before succumbing to shock. They came as 3, but they moved as 1. What the church would not admit. Each child was discovered alone in the pews of shuttered churches. No witnesses, no injuries, no memories. Just names of children who'd supposedly died decades before. Baptism records showed their sponsors were listed as unknown. Their confessions were silent, and every mirror in the orphanage had been turned backward before the night they vanished. These were not orphans. They were invasions, or perhaps returns. Jeremiah Fennick was a minor postal worker in 1883, Maryland, with a peculiar hobby, collecting accounts of impossible siblings. Over 18 years, he compiled a leather-bound codex cataloging 227 incidents across 17 states involving identical siblings born years apart, some with conflicting death certificates. Fennick was dismissed as mentally unwell after claiming that siblings were being reissued, not born. He insisted that their arrival coincided with church bells ringing at wrong hours, the sudden growth of black mold, and the death of livestock without wounds. In 1894, he vanished from his locked home. On his desk, a single phrase was etched into the wood: "You cannot study what studies you back." His codex was found beneath the floorboards 14 years later by a tenant who was later institutionalized for prolonged screaming fits when near infants. The government took the codex into evidence, but 6 of its pages were already missing, ripped out, smudged with fingerprints too small to belong to any adult. We have seen only copies, but they hint at something horrid: triplets born to different mothers. Children without navels, siblings who share nightmares across thousands of miles. Something unnatural was networking. Milledgeville, Georgia, 1902. The asylum was overcrowded, underfunded, and full of whispers. That summer, 3 new children were admitted on the same day, triplets, they claimed, although the mothers were unknown and the paperwork incomplete. The children didn't speak. They just stared. Within a week, 17 patients were dead. The deaths were unexplainable: mouths open, fingers broken inward, eyes fixed toward the ward's iron ceiling vents. Nurses said the triplets never moved at night, but each morning they were in different rooms. One nurse quit after discovering one child mimicking her every word simultaneously, including prayers she whispered under her breath. The asylum records that summer were destroyed in a fire, but 2 surviving photographs show the triplets standing barefoot in the courtyard. All 3 are identical. In 1973, those same 3 faces appeared in a school photo from Oklahoma. Unaged, unchanged, unexplained. St. Agatha's Orphanage in Michigan had one rule: never ask where the children came from. Just clothe them, feed them, and never leave them alone with the chapel door unlocked. In 1890, the head caretaker, Reverend Malcolm Ordway, installed a lead-lined room beneath the orphanage floorboards. It had no windows, no lights. It was called the Whisper Vault. He claimed certain children could speak things into being, not spells, not prayers, but sounds that changed people, made them forget, bend, obey, or die. These children were never beaten, never raised a voice, they just whispered. Ordway would later be found blind and catatonic, mouth sewn shut, after claiming that the triplets knew my thoughts before I could think them. Only 14 children ever lived in the vault. All but one disappeared in April 1893. The surviving girl never spoke again. But every window she passed would frost over from the inside. Father Elias Belden, a Jesuit priest in Rhode Island, was beloved for his theological brilliance, until 1887, when he delivered a sermon so disturbing the diocese immediately removed him from ministry. Only fragments of the sermon survive, scribbled by a parishioner. They do not come from wombs, but from the wounds in time. They do not grow, but gather. They are born thrice, once in flesh, once in silence, and once again in shame. Weeks later, Father Belden was found in the basement crypt of St. Roderick's Church, kneeling before a trio of tiny coffins, all open, all empty. Belden's tongue had been cut out, but the cut was precise, surgically clean, as though done not in rage, but in ritual. His eyes were wide open, still weeping hours after death. The church labeled it suicide, but no blade was ever found, and no one ever found out who built the 3 infant-sized coffins under the church. From that day, parishioners claimed to hear laughter from inside the confessional booth, even when it was empty. Candlewick, Pennsylvania, 1861. The town's centennial celebration was to feature a parade of blessings, led by the town's oldest triplets, the Milridge sisters. But the morning of the event, every animal in the town lay dead. No signs of poison, struggle, or disease. Just silence. Still, the parade went on. The Milridge triplet, Seisold, Ingrid, and Ivy, walked barefoot down the main road. No smiles, no speech, just matching blood, red dresses and hands that never unclasped. They passed 317 townsfolk. Within 30 days, 296 were dead. The cause, unknown. The bodies, all found with a faint, unexplained burn mark in the center of their chests. Survivors called it the Red Thread Year. The town never recovered. Local records show a disturbing detail. Candlewick had no record of triplets born that century, none at all. To this day, the town avoids all references to siblings, multiples, or children under the age of 10. Even playgrounds are forbidden. And on the centennial of the centennial, in 1961, 3 identical girls were photographed in front of the abandoned town hall. In Ohio's Lorain County, 1882, the Barrett family purchased a farmhouse once known as the Silent House, named for its prior owners, who reportedly vanished overnight, leaving all 6 children's shoes perfectly aligned at the doorway. The Barretts had 4 children of their own, none of whom played music, owned instruments, or attended church. But neighbors began reporting music, haunting 3-part harmonies, emanating from the house after dark. Always the same melody, always the same time, 3:03 a.m. The Barretts denied it, but in March the oldest daughter was found sitting on the roof, humming the tune with her eyes rolled back. When questioned, she said, "The sisters taught me the song. It's how we remember the door." Within weeks, all 4 Barrett children were gone. Sheriff's deputies found only 2 things: an unfinished music box on the hearth, and a phrase etched into the walls of the children's bedroom in what appeared to be soot. "When 3 hum together, the gate can hear." The Olmsted Institute for Unfit Children, founded in 1854 in upstate New York, was known for its strict order and brutal punishments, but it also had an unwritten rule passed down between wardens: never house three of a kind in the same dorm. In 1879, a new warden, Harold Brimsley, dismissed this superstition as nonsense and allowed three identical girls to share dormitory B. Within days, the school's clocks began malfunctioning. Pages tore themselves from ledgers. Nurses reported bleeding from their ears without injury. On the seventh night, the entire west wing of the institute burned to the ground. No accelerant, no matches, no witnesses. Survivors claimed the three girls had vanished before the fire, leaving behind only their nightgowns folded perfectly into the shape of triangles. Brimsley would later say in a letter, "They did not burn the dormitory, they returned it to where it was kept before." The Olmsted Institute closed permanently in 1881. The St. Holly's Seminary for Boys in Montana recorded an unusual spike in twin and triplet births from its alumni between 1890 and 1905. Local doctors called it miraculous. But Father Genovese, the seminary's confessor, disagreed. He claimed these children weren't gifts, but echoes, a sign that something had breached the natural order. He traced each of these births to a single chapel sermon delivered in 1889, where a visiting friar, Brother Adalric, spoke in a language no one recognized, not Latin, not Greek, not human. Soon after, three brothers born to an alumnus, Samuel Croft, were found suffocated in their cribs, mouths filled with sand. Their mother had gone blind. The father had no memory of ever naming them. The seminary was quietly defunded in 1907. But even today, local records show a disturbing trend. Children born in the area are twice as likely to be multiples and 4 times more likely to suffer from unexplained sleepwalking, glass shattering, and nocturnal nosebleeds. In 1874, the town of New Minerva, Vermont, arrested 3 midwives, Sisters Constance, Agnes, and Bellamy Dray, for allegedly summoning children without labor. Several witnesses claimed the women arrived at stillbirths, whispered over the bodies, and drew breath back into them. One girl, Emmeline Ford, was born with fully developed molars and the ability to speak in Latin. Her mother bled for 3 days and never woke again. Emmeline lived precisely 3 months, then vanished from her cradle during a thunderstorm. The Dray sisters were tried not for witchcraft, but for obstructing the divine order of death. The court proceedings were sealed. Their jail cell, found empty 3 weeks later, the floor was covered in tiny footprints. Locals swore they heard newborn cries beneath the earth for years after, and in 1902, triplet girls with the same names, Constance, Agnes, Bellamy, appeared in a different state orphanage 300 miles away. Same faces, same silence, they refused to be separated. In 1865, an all-girls boarding school in Oregon commissioned murals for its Grand Hall. A traveling artist named Ferenc Marlowe painted 12 panels, each depicting biblical stories, saints, and heaven's gates. But within the 7th panel, a nativity scene, he added 3 strange infants not part of any scripture, pale, identical, their eyes fully black. He claimed the children were not imagined but real girls who followed me in every town I passed. 1 week after the mural was unveiled, 4 girls were found dead, drowned in the school's dry well. The 7th panel changed. The 3 infants were now smiling. When questioned, Marlowe gouged out his own eyes with a palette knife and said, "They weren't painted. They were waiting." The mural was sealed behind brick, but in 1909, during a renovation, workers removed the wall and found that 3 new children had been added to the image. None had faces. In census archives from 1850-1910, a strange pattern emerges. Across 19 states, the same 3 names repeat again and again: Elias, Miriam, Reuel, always born together, always orphaned, no consistent race, religion, or geography, just triplets, discovered in towns days after tragedies, fires, floods, mass deaths. Folklorists coined them the unforgotten, and yet, No folklore exists prior to the 19th century because these are not stories, these are interruptions. A linguist, Dr. Edna Sherling Cross, referenced all known entries and found something horrifying. The names form a linguistic cipher, each containing phonetic roots of ancient pre-Babylonian burial languages. These weren't names. They were triggers. And every time they were spoken together within hearing range of a child under the age of 7, someone died within 13 days. In 1896, the Ashbury Institute for Orphaned Girls began receiving anonymous donations requesting mirrored dormitory construction, 2 identical wings, each housing the exact same number of children, furniture, and even window placements. When questioned, the benefactors stated simply, "The balance must be kept." Over the next 2 years, orphan girls began to experience what doctors described as mirror seizures, episodes where they described events happening to girls on the other side of the building with eerie accuracy. When one child burned her hand in wing A girl in wing B blistered in the same spot. Staff tried splitting them up. That night, 7 girls disappeared. In the East Wing dining hall, a message appeared in frost across both walls. Backwards and forward. If they are not 2, they become 3. If 3, they wake the door. The institute burned down a year later, and no one rebuilt it. In 1908, Kansas police raided a farmhouse belonging to a widow named Prudence Elwick after reports of animal cries from her cellar. Instead, they found 3 young girls, identical, silent, dressed in burial gowns, and their mouths sewn shut with red twine. Prudence insisted she had not kidnapped them. She said she had given birth to them in her dreams, and they had crawled through her wall one night. The girls were taken to a hospital, but each time a doctor tried to cut the threads from their mouths, his hands would tremble uncontrollably. One suffered a stroke, another went blind, the threads could not be cut. 1 week later, the girls were gone, their bed sheets torn into 3 long strips, twisted into rope, hanging from the rafters like umbilical cords. On the wall, in their blood, stillborn doesn't mean gone. In Mississippi, the Hollow family claimed a rare phenomenon. Each generation birthed triplets, all identical, all mute until age 5. Each first word, always the same, return. By 1910, medical examiners determined none of the triplets were genetically related to their supposed parents. DNA analysis didn't exist, but blood types, bone age, and skeletal anomalies showed that they couldn't have come from any known lineage. And yet, they always looked like the mother. The Hollow family tree ends suddenly after a fire in 1911. Officially, no survivors. But in 1953, 3 women with the last name Hollow were photographed attending a funeral in Boston. Unaged, identical, silent, they left behind no footprints in the snow. A folk lullaby documented in Appalachian communities contains verses never printed, passed from mother to daughter by voice only. Scholars dismissed it as myth. But Dr. Lyle Catterick compiled over 40 cases in which women who sang the full song in their 3rd trimester gave birth to twins or triplets, even after previously confirmed single pregnancies. The melody is dissonant, musically unnatural. It ends abruptly mid-line, and the final phrase, when sung aloud, causes nausea, teeth pain, and temporary tinnitus in 38% of listeners. Children born under this melody develop unnerving traits, perfect pitch, backward dreaming, and in one case, remembrance of previous deaths. Catterick's notes ended abruptly in 1910. The last entry reads, "They do not sing to sleep, they sing to summon." Between 1850 and 1910, U.S. census takers were instructed to mark unusual twin or triplet births with code 13 a TW in the margin. But in 1911, a memo was circulated from the Bureau of Vital Statistics, ordering a purge of Category 13, a TW records. No reason was given. All copies were burned. However, one surviving form, unmarked by the fire, shows a household in Illinois with the entry, "Triplets, unnamed, returned." The family no longer existed by the next census. Their land was turned into a public park. Children playing there have reported seeing three sisters in the woods, always just watching. A defrocked bishop, Matthias Grent, published a heretical document in 1909 titled The Doctrine of Division. Only 2 copies survive. In it, Grent claims the existence of preborn forces and entities which enter our world in threes to fracture spiritual unity. Not demons, not ghosts, but biological invaders from a previous death. They divide faith, divide families, divide time. He believed governments, churches, and hospitals were coordinating to record, then erase them. One sentence haunts every scholar who has studied the text. Wherever 3 exist as one, something greater waits behind them, and it wears a child's smile. From Black Hollow to Ashbury, from St. Agatha's vault to the Hollow family tree. This isn't just a tale of mysterious triplets or haunted siblings. It's a recurrence, a pattern that suggests our world has been bleeding children from some other realm, not ours, but near. They walk among us. They are not ghosts, not clones, not figments. They are echoes of something that still remembers pain. They return to places of trauma, birth into broken bloodlines, speak in forgotten dialects, split families apart, then vanish, and in the places where they walked, time stutters, mirrors refuse reflection, and parents weep without knowing why. So if you ever hear 3 children humming in harmony, don't open the door.